Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're taking, a really close look at a fascinating collection of sources, the Nigerian news and global snippets from July 7, 2025. Our mission, like always, is to cut through all that noise, find those really crucial nuggets of knowledge, and maybe unearth some surprising facts hidden in these materials. We've got everything from big newspaper headlines to, those quick did you know snippets and today in history bits. Think of it like a snapshot, yeah? Just one day giving us this window into Nigeria's challenges, triumphs, and even some global quirks. Okay, let's unpack this. So first up, let's dive straight into the political currents, the economic realities shaping things on this particular day. It seems the 2027 presidential election is already buzzing. Top headline, and it's definitely a bold one. Peter Obi has declared he will run for president, and he's been very, very clear he will not be Atiku's vice president.
Right. And this isn't just, a simple announcement. It feels like a strategic play. Obi declaring this early could actually force a kind of premature reshuffling of political alliances. It sends a very clear signal, doesn't it? Potentially splits the opposition focus and sets the stage much earlier than we usually see in Nigerian politics. It's definitely not the usual wait-and-see game.
Yeah, definitely shaking things up early. And then on the flip side of that, you've got these really starkly contrasting views. Nysom Wike, former governor of Rivers State, he's out there saying, Nigeria dead before Tinubu took over. Strong words. And he's dismissing these rescue Nigeria claims from the ADC coalition party as just selfish.
Yeah.
Plus, Zainab Galadima is predicting President Tinubu might only pull about 30% of northern votes in 2027.
What's fascinating here is exactly this really intense early jockeying and these completely different reads on how the current administration is doing and what might happen next.
Yeah.
We're already seeing political shifts, like Governor Makandi's loyalist resigning his PDP chair in protest, and reports that the ADC is starting to sort of take over PDP structures up north. It just shows how fluid everything is, even this far out from an election.
Absolutely. Okay, so shifting from the political chess game to the economy, the ground truth, we hit a pretty big number right away, and maybe a bit concerning. Reports say 10 states borrowed a massive N$417 billion, and this is despite actually getting higher federal allocations.
Yeah, N$417 billion. Borrowed by just 10 states. That's a staggering amount. To give you a sense of scale, that's roughly what you'd need for dozens of big projects like hospitals or major roads. Borrowing that much, even with more money coming in, really points to some deep fiscal issues, doesn't it? It's kind of like trying to fill a leaky bucket. Money comes in, but it's going out maybe even faster. And it's no surprise that you see the NLC, the Nigeria Labor Congress, threatening mass action. They're talking about rising poverty, insecurity. It directly reflects how these economic realities hit people.
Right. But there is a little bit of good news for consumers, some relief maybe. Marketers are apparently dropping petrol prices below N$900 a liter, and that seems to follow Dangote cutting prices.
Yeah, and that price drop is actually a really important signal. It suggests that more local refining, especially from places like the Dangote refinery, is starting to affect the market. When you can refine more fuel inside the country, you depend less on expensive imports, which ideally means lower prices at the pump. It's a direct plus from investing locally.
Okay, good to see. But the wider economic picture, it still looks pretty complex. We're seeing the federal government's electricity subsidy for just Q1 hit N$536 billion. And that's amidst all the existing debt problems. Plus, Nigeria's losing, get this, $500 million a year on war insurance. Even though its waters are now officially piracy-free, that seems wild. But it's not all outgoing. The NUPRC, the petroleum regulator, earned N$28 billion from oil licensing fees.
Exactly. Taken together, these figures paint a very mixed picture, very complex. That electricity subsidy, for example, N$536 billion in a quarter, that's a huge drain, points to big structural problems in the power sector. And losing $500 million on war insurance when piracy's down, that's a classic case of how international market perception can lag, Insurance companies are often slow to adjust risk premiums downwards. Nigeria's past reputation still costs them. Meanwhile, the NUPRC earnings show money is coming in, but it often gets overshadowed by these massive costs and missed opportunities. Oh, and that stalled ghost worker audit mentioned in the reports. Another sign of ongoing struggles with financial oversight needs tackling.
Yeah, accountability is key. And speaking of spending and accountability, the presidential aircraft issue is back in the news. The old presidential jet is up for sale, seems related to President Tinubu getting that new N$150 billion aircraft. And separately, the government's also selling an older Obasanjo-era jet in Switzerland.
Well, this really throws that tension between public perception and maybe governance practicalities into sharp relief. Selling older assets makes fiscal sense, sure, But buying a N150 billion balloon plane when the economy is tough, that's always going to attract scrutiny, isn't it? It raises questions about priorities, the message it sends. And related to that accountability point, you have SERAP, the rights group, calling on Tinubu to publish the NDDC audit report, the Niger Delta Development Commission report, and prosecute anyone behind delays. It's another push for transparency in how public money is used.
Okay, a lot happening on the economic and political front. Let's shift now to a really critical issue: security. President Tinubu made some very strong statements here, declaring Nigeria's unity under attack from terrorists, separatists, and he gave a direct order to the military: crush terrorists, you have my support.
Those are weighty words from the top, no doubt,
Yeah.
projecting strength, resolve. But then you look at the reality on the ground, and there's a disconnect, a real challenge. Governor Aliyah in Benue State put his finger right on it. He said, forest guards can't fight AK-47 wielding terrorists with Dane guns. And that just perfectly highlights the gap between the rhetoric and the practical need for proper equipment and support for those on the front lines.
Yeah, that quote really lands, and the immediate threats seem quite varied, too. Police put out an alert in Oyo State about a July 7th Black Axe cult Founders Day. That's a worry for public safety. And then, tragically, violence at a student union election at Auchi Polytechnic. 2 deaths, 6 injuries reported.
These incidents really broaden the picture, don't they? It shows the security challenges are multifaceted. It's not just about insurgency. It's also urban cults. It's violence even around student elections. Each needs a different, tailored response from the authorities.
Absolutely. And beyond those man-made threats, there's nature. The looming threat from the Lagdivego Dam release is causing mobilization in Benue, Edo, Bayelsa, potential flooding. And just a sad global note, nearly 80 dead reported in Texas floods, with a search still on for 10 missing girls.
It's a stark reminder, unfortunately, of this universal vulnerability to environmental disasters. Whether it's a dam overflow threat in Nigeria or terrible floods in Texas, communities everywhere are facing these environmental pressures. And relevant to Nigeria, NIMET, the meteorological agency, is forecasting 3 days of rain and thunderstorms starting Monday. So ongoing vigilance needed there too.
Right. And in other crime news, the NDLEA, the drug agency, seized cocaine headed for the UK and Saudi Arabia, hidden in lipsticks.
Right.
Quite creative, you have to admit. And in South Africa, there's a probe into a Nigerian disappearing during a drug raid.
This really raises that important question, doesn't it? About how persistent and, frankly, inventive these illicit networks are. And it highlights just how crucial international cooperation is to fight cross-border crime. It's a constant battle. We also saw other police actions reported on this day, didn't we?
Yeah.
Arrest of a cult leader in Ondo, the tragic killing of a police inspector up in Kaduna, and a chief security officer and chief of staff declared wanted for attacking a local government administrator in Rivers. It just paints this picture of constant, varied law enforcement activity across the country.
A very busy day on that front. Okay, let's try and shift focus a bit, look towards development, social initiatives, some positives here. In Lagos, for example, there's a report saying the city delivered 2.5 million housing units, which is huge, even though they still face a 3.4 million unit deficit. But also, 210 Lagos residents are finally getting homes after waiting 7 years. That must be incredible for them.
Oh, absolutely. Those are genuinely significant achievements. Imagine being one of those 210 families finally getting keys after 7 years. That's life-changing. So while the overall housing gap is still massive, efforts like these show real tangible progress for people. It shows solutions are possible.
That's a great point. Now, education and labor, still some tough spots. ASUP, the Polytechnic Lecturers Union, is talking about an 8-month salary delay in federal institutions. That's got to be incredibly tough on morale and, the quality of education itself. But on the other side, JMB, the exam board, released mop-up exam results, and we see Lagos students competing for scholarships. So efforts continue to support students.
Yeah, the impact of those salary delays on academics is really worrying. It affects everything.
Yeah.
But you're right, seeing exam results released, scholarships being competed for, it shows the system still pushing forward, trying to create opportunities despite the hurdles. It's that mix, again, progress happening alongside these persistent problems.
Definitely a recurring theme. We also saw some other community-focused news. Governor Oti in Abia State received 3 inmates freed after, 26 years in prison. That's quite a story. And Ekiti State is training 500 personnel for Amotekun, the local security network, and their anti-open grazing corps. Proactive local security efforts.
These are really powerful examples, aren't they? States working on different levels, improving individual lives through potentially justice reform and boosting community safety with local security outfits.
Yeah.
It shows that diverse approach to governing.
Amidst all this serious news, sometimes the most amazing little facts just jump out. And this next section I always find fascinating. Here's where it gets really interesting. Did you know that 12% of all the world's languages are found in just one country, Papua New Guinea? It has over 820 indigenous languages, more than any other country on Earth. Imagine that. And here's another great one for you. The word velociraptor. It comes from Latin, velox meaning swift and raptor meaning robber. So a velociraptor is literally a speedy robber.
That Papua New Guinea fact is just astounding, isn't it? The sheer linguistic diversity crammed into one place. Think of the cultural richness that represents. Over 820 languages. Wow. And Velociraptor Speedy Robber. It's brilliant. It shows how many words, even scary dinosaur names, have these quite literal, sometimes surprising origins. Just reminds you there's always something new to learn, hidden in plain sight.
Absolutely love those. Okay, and finally, let's look at today in history for July 7th. On this day in 1998, Chief MKO Abiola died. He was widely seen as the winner of the 1993 Nigerian presidential election, and he died while in detention, meeting with the U.S. delegation. His death triggered huge protests, a really pivotal, still resonant moment in Nigeria's journey towards democracy.
Yes, that event carries immense historical weight in Nigeria. Abiola's death really marked a critical, very difficult point in the struggle for democracy. It still sparks strong emotions and discussions about political justice, sacrifice. It's a date etched very deeply in the national memory.
A somber but important anniversary. Also, on this day, but back in 1985, Boris Becker became the youngest ever men's Wimbledon champion. Just 17 years old, beat Kevin Kern in the final. An incredible sporting achievement.
Truly remarkable, just phenomenal talent and nerve at such a young age. It's another reminder, isn't it, how groundbreaking moments, big and small, can happen on any given day across all fields.
So true. So as we wrap up this deep dive for today, it really is incredible, isn't it? The sheer amount and variety of stuff we've pulled just from one single day's news cycle. From the big, complex issues of national governance, economic strains, serious security threats, but also seeing those small but vital wins, like in housing, education efforts continuing, and then throwing in those surprising global facts and historical markers. It really feels like a mosaic, a snapshot of a nation, maybe even the world, juggling its past, present, and future all at once.
And that's exactly the point of doing a deep dive like this, isn't it? It shows how things that seem separate on the surface, politics, economy, security, even history, are actually all connected. You start to see the patterns, the underlying currents, how one thing impacts another. Knowledge is definitely most valuable when you connect the dots and apply it. Seeing these links helps us understand that bigger picture.
So what does this all mean? For you, listening in as you digest all this, thinking about this blend we saw today, the challenges, the economic pressures, security worries, alongside the progress in housing, the resilience, those historical echoes, what does this July 7th snapshot tell you about maybe the kind of resilience complex societies need to navigate their path? Or perhaps does it highlight that constant, often overlooked thread of struggle and aspiration that runs through time? Something to chew on. We definitely encourage you to reflect and keep doing your own deep dives into the fascinating world around you.